Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction, Aaron. I appreciate it. And Jasmine, thank you for reaching out to me as well. Um, I'm really grateful that you have started CHOW, and they're making yourself available to so many people. It's nice to be able to tell my story and to know that there's an actual group out there that if people needed help or inspired to get help, that there's an actual place they can go to. So I want to thank you very much for that. As she mentioned, I am an actor, writer, based out of Los Angeles. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. And I did serve as a server in various restaurants between Nashville and Los Angeles for 23 years. I thought it was just going to be a couple years. And now I earn a living making comedic videos with my wife about those 23 years as a server. So I just cannot escape it. I still put on the apron for the videos too. And I play all the parts of the staff and the customers. And it's actually very rewarding. I would say cathartic. And it's only weird when my toddler sees me walking around the house in earrings and wigs. But we have a lot of fun with it. It's all done kind of here at the house. But today I want to tell you my story, and I'm hoping that it will help you in some way, or you'll connect with it in some way. Maybe through me telling my story and where my life's at now, that there'll be something in there that will either inspire you or get you thinking about something in possibly a different way. But I'm not really good at completely analyzing why I did everything I did. I just would rather tell you the story and go from there. I've been clean and sober for 7 years and 5 months now. And yeah. I know everybody here is not an addict or anything like that. So I want to say that at the top, but we all have something in our lives that blocks us. But that was mine. And I'll get into that a little bit more. I started using for the first time. And I say using, I'm going to talk about harder drugs. I did drink before this, but I started using for the first time in my mid 30s. So it's kind of a late bloomer there. I've always been a late bloomer with everything. So why not addiction? But I was very anti-drug. I grew up in a very actually loving family. There was no abuse. I didn't really have even an inkling or a want to use for most of my life. Was a pretty happy kid growing up. So, but I moved out to LA in my early 20s, trying to be an actor and a writer, and it wasn't happening. I was just banging my head against the wall so much, and it starts to really wear on you. And I found myself in my mid 30s in a toxic relationship. I'll just say that. This girl who we were living together, and I knew she did drugs occasionally, and it bothered me. But it wasn't until we'd been together for a while, and I was getting pretty depressed, and she kept mentioning, let's just do ecstasy, whatever, right? She kept kind of pushing this idea. She was telling me about her friends who did it, and it's great, blah, blah. And I finally, agreed to that. It was just her and I alone doing this. And if you've ever done that drug, first of all, ecstasy, like that hell of a name they gave that one, right? I resisted all the other drugs, but something about the word ecstasy, I guess. But so if you've ever done that, it bonds you with the person you're with. So long story short, it actually saved a toxic relationship that should not have been saved in a way, because now we have this thing we could do occasionally together, and it made us feel great. And it was and so fast forward a little bit, then now I'm doing cocaine, and that became my drug of choice. Because ecstasy is too much of a commitment. I mean, it just destroyed me for 2 days after. So cocaine, I found I could just kind of do, and I could work doing it. And if I got the right cocktail of vodka or wine and cocaine, I could do that and then go work my shift. And people were none the wiser as far as I could tell. I was grumpy, maybe a little cloudy, but I could get this equilibrium. And so it just became a constant. And there was a point where she and I were doing it so much, we kind of realized it. It just kind of steamrolled. And we had this conversation, like, we got to stop. Yes, agreed. We are stopping. This is crazy. And she did. She always had a little bit different relationship with it than I did, I guess. And I couldn't. And that's when I knew I had a real problem, because now I'm doing it behind her back. I'm the only one of the two of us doing it. I couldn't stop. And worked out where her schedule was opposite of mine. So she had early mornings. So she was in bed by the time I get home from working at the restaurant. So basically it was me at night, just going numb, pretty much every night. And then sometimes during the day, if I could, whenever I could, but mostly it was those nights. I was like a loner. I was not like a party. Cocaine was not like a party drug for me. It was me alone. If I was out, I just couldn't wait till I could get home with just my little stash and just numb myself out until I'd pretty much pass out. And I couldn't stop. I got arrested. I was trying to buy drugs from an undercover officer. It stopped me for a few months, but even that didn't stop me. The threat of it was my first arrest, so I didn't have to do any like jail time or anything, but I was forced to go to Narcotics Anonymous for a certain number of court-ordered meetings and then report back to the judge, and it was expunged. I could actually, it's the laws in California. I can even legally say I was never arrested now. It's gone, which is a blessing. But I was on probation, and then I go back to using. So that didn't even stop me. And then what finally stopped me was two things. I'm looking back at it. One was a little tiny creative breakthrough, and the other was a relationship, falling in love with who's now my wife. Those two things happened around the same time. So I'll just go through both of those really quickly. But the tiny creative breakthrough, I mentioned I was a writer and an actor. I had done it all. I'd made the short film. I tried to get into festivals. I'd gone on 1,000 auditions, just no's, mind-numbing amount of no's and rejection. That's what it takes, to be an actor. And you just start to feel like there's no point in you pursuing anything creatively anymore. There's no audience for it. There's no reason for it. And that was part of the reason I was using. I came home from a shift one night and I went on Facebook and I just started typing. This one couple stood out to me that I had served. I didn't even serve them, actually. They were at the bar and I overheard a conversation. And I wrote a story about it, basically. You could call it an essay or like a David Sedaris type essay or short story as a Facebook update, several paragraphs. And I just kind of typed it up and hit send, whatever. And I got this crazy response back. And over my time in LA, I'd befriended other actors and writers and stuff. And some of them were pretty notable. You know who they are, perhaps. And I was getting responses from them. I was getting responses from a lot of people saying, this is great. This is great. And I was like, it was like the first time in quite a while I'd had any kind of feedback like that. And it was something that had happened at work, and I was just, typing it up. And so I would start doing more of them. I called them my server updates, and people loved them. And it was that little tiny creative breakthrough that it was like a flicker of light kind of going off, almost could feel it inside me, of like, for the first time, like I had something to possibly live for. There was like something in me still to offer the world creatively. And my identity was so wrapped up in that, it was a big deal for me. Around that time, I'm talking to Andrea at work. We've worked together at a restaurant. We'd worked together for years. I just suddenly, the last few months, she and I were clearly interested in each other, but I was not going to enter a relationship with this going on while still using. And she didn't even know about it, which brings me to another part. No one knew about it. I was very good at hiding it. So I just decided then and there, if I was going to pursue something with her, I had to stop if I could. And so I remember one morning, I dumped the rest of what I had in the toilet, flushed it, texted a friend named Jimmy, who I had known for years. We had performed together, comedy together, and he is very open about his clean time and sobriety. So I knew he had gone through this before, and he had shared that with me. And so I knew who to call. So I texted him and said, just so someone knows, I'm letting you know, I'm just dumped the rest of my drugs in the toilet and I'm driving to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. This is someone, by the way, who didn't know I even used, but I just needed to tell somebody. And I drove to Narcotics Anonymous, and I haven't touched drugs since. I did stumble a little bit with alcohol like 10 days later, and that was it. That was the last time I even drank. But there's a couple things about that I want to mention. When it was time, when I wanted to change, there was more support structure in my life than I realized. There was a friend who had shared with me, actually a couple of them, but there was someone in my life I could tell that wouldn't judge me, who had been through it. Later, when I told my family, I have family that supported me. Andrea, when I told her, was extremely supportive. And there was Narcotics Anonymous, and I'm not promoting any 12-step program at this time. This is my story, but they were there for me. And so what I'm saying is, like, when I was in the bowels of it, I felt so completely alone. And when I made that switch, suddenly I had all this support all around me. And I just think that's interesting. And I don't know if that's the same for a lot of us, but I think a lot of us might not really realize what is available to us, who is available to us, because we just feel completely alone sometimes. But it was all there. And maybe it needed to happen that way, but I had all those lined up in a way. And then for me, for staying clean, there's a couple of things I want to talk about. One, it's accountability for me. I was always a good boy. I was always like a good student. I like to please the teacher and my parents, and I'm a people pleaser in a way. But so I always knew if I ever told anybody, I'd probably have a good chance of getting clean, just because I just kept it such a secret. I was a very secretive user. I was really good at just lying and doing whatever. I never gotten to, thank God, to the point where I was stealing and that kind of thing. I was always able to maintain a facade of I had my stuff together, but I knew the accountability would help. So going to those meetings for the first 9 months, I don't go to them now, but for the first 9 months, it was very helpful for me to have that daily, these meetings, and to have people in my life like Andrea and other people I would tell, and they could ask me anytime, how's it going? That helped me tremendously. It's an external motivation, but I think I needed that while I was slowly working on the internal, because that's where the real battle is, in my opinion. I think all of us have to get really real with ourselves about why we do whatever we do, whether it's use drugs or whatever, because that to me is the symptom, something else. And for me, it was this feeling of being a failure, trying something and not succeeding at it, and feeling like a failure. In my 30s, I wanted to be a strong version of myself. Instead, I was a weak, scared person. I wanted to have a great relationship. Instead, I was in a toxic one. I wanted to be an actor and a writer, but I was a waiter. And so I just felt like a failure. And I obsessed over that in the past and worry about the future. And it just wasn't present. Matter of fact, I think that's what was so intoxicating about MDNA the first time I used it. It was the first time I couldn't remember in a long time where it just made me I wasn't in the future or present. I was just right there in the moment. But we have to find healthy ways of doing that, of being present in the moment and not just completely ridden with anxiety about the future and the past. Which brings me to another point I want to talk about. I want to talk about something, maybe you've thought of it this way, maybe you haven't. I'm thinking of it this way because of my background in improv. So Erin mentioned at the beginning that I teach. I'm not teaching currently, but I've taught for years improv. That's what we do at this place called the Groundlings. It's in LA. It's a sketch and improv school. It's also why I have so many wigs. But at Groundlings is where like Will Ferrell, Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, Phil Hartman, Pee Wee Herman was created there, if you go way back. So a lot of sketch and comedy actors have gone through the Groundlings. It's kind of my little home base. And I took classes there, but it wasn't until I was a teacher that this really sank in. The most fundamental, most important thing we teach students in improv is listening. Teach you how to improve your listening skills. When people get up to do improv, they are in their heads when they're starting out. They're wondering, how can I say something funny? What am I going to come up with? They're nervous. There's a lot of anxiety there. You're worried about how this is going to go and all this. And the magic is the little lesson you learn, if you can embrace it and practice it and learn it, is if you put all your focus on the other person in the scene, if you truly listen to what they're saying and all you're worried about is taking what they said and adding something to it, that's how you build a scene in improv. And it's an incredible life skill as well. And it's helped me tremendously in life, this idea of listening. And I want you to, if there's one takeaway to that, I want you to take that from me. Maybe you're a great listener. I've found some people in life are naturally great listeners. They're just extremely curious about other people. And some are like me. You have to really work at it. You're more in your head. You're more thinking about yourself. How are you being perceived? How are you coming across? And that kind of thing. And if you can learn to listen, and I always tell people, just imagine there's almost like a little dot hovering and it's over you, but move it to the other person to make them the priority. Just hovering over them, that's where your attention lies. And you're not mute. You can then add to that, but you're adding to what they said. You're responding to what they said. The reason I think that's such a powerful life skill for everyone, but including people who are struggling with any kind of addiction or anything like that, because and it might just be from my experience, but I was always, like I said, having a lot of anxiety about future, the past, and myself. And the more I've learned to listen and put the emphasis, whether it's on my wife when we're talking, my kid, a friend I'm with, whether it's someone I want to be helping at that time, the less I get worried about myself. And I find that to be very useful. So in a weird way, it also, by the way, made me a much better server when I was serving. Because people ask me sometimes, well, what's your advice as a server? Like if you had to give one piece of advice, I'd say, listen. A lot of servers are in the same boat. You're worried about all these other tables. The chef just yelled this at you and that kind of thing. And so you're there physically at the table, but you're miles away and they're talking to you and you're getting just the bare minimum of what you need to kind of like do it. And then you run off. If you can be still in that moment and truly, truly listen to what the guest is saying to you, and really take that in and start to really understand what they need and want and where they're at, you can tailor make an experience for them that they will feel. They'll also feel it immediately if you can greet them with that. And they'll relax and everything. All the blood pressure goes down and it just makes for a better experience. So, but to me, it's about getting out of my head. So I don't know, at the end of the day, listening gets me out of my head. And my head is where, if I get really trapped in my head, that's where it gets really dark. That's where it's all anxiety. It's where it's all insecurity. That's where it's all just all the bad possible things, the worst case scenarios just play out in my head. And the more I listen to other people, think genuinely concerned about other people and that kind of thing, I get out of my head more, and I'm a happier person. Of course, you have to take care of yourself. This isn't me saying, you don't matter at all. This is just in your relationships, really listening more. So that's helped me, the accountability and learning how to listen and get out of my head. Those are the two things I think that have helped me not only just stay clean, but live a really happy life. It's completely turned around. I feel I have had some recent success with making some content and getting an audience, and that's been really gratifying. But even the 5 years of being clean before that happened, I would pinch myself, and I was working 7 nights a week between teaching, waiting tables, and just, pretty paycheck to paycheck. And I still felt so lucky just from the relationships I had in my life. So these days, life it's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's good. And my head is clear. My heart feels open, and I'm excited to see what life brings now, So that's what I've prepared. Aaron, Jasmine, if you want to, if there's extra time, you want to spend it however you like, or if you want to do any Q&A.